From the New York Times Learning Network, I'm Ross Flatt. Welcome to Connect Your Students to the World with Lesson of the Day. For those of you who are familiar with the Learning Network, you know that we offer over 1,000 pieces each year, all based on content from the New York Times. Many of those features include writing prompts, sometimes based on a question, and other times based on a picture that asks students to write in a low-stakes way. But today, we're going to show you a feature that takes things a step further, offering an entire lesson based on New York Times content. So whether you teach the humanities, or STEM subjects, or just want to connect your students to the world, Lesson of the Day is a wonderful resource when you want to teach an entire lesson around New York Times content. And to help me tell you about Lesson of the Day, I'll be joined by Nicole Daniels, staff editor at the Learning Network, and Rachel Manley, professional development manager at the Learning Network. So let's begin. In today's webinar, we're going to examine different types of lessons of the day, as well as explore the ways to use Lesson of the Day with your students. By the end of this webinar, we hope to show you our wide range of lessons of the day so that you can think of different ways to bring them into your classroom, whether that classroom is in person or remote. So I'd first like to show you how to access Lesson of the Day from the Learning Network homepage. So to do that, you would go to newyorktimes.com/section/learning, and you would scroll down. When you scroll down, you'll see our panel labeled Activities for Students. You would click on the blue icon labeled Articles and Questions. And when you click on that, you'll see Article of the Day, Teenagers in the Times, and STEM articles that you can pick from. So to access Lesson of the Day, you'll want to pick on Article of the Day. Once you click on that, you would select a lesson that might interest you. So for example, if I was doing this for my classroom, I was a social studies teacher for over 10 years. I would have wanted to go to one of our most recent lessons of the day, The Lost Diaries of War. I would select that, and then it brings me into the actual lesson itself. Now you'll notice all of the titles to our lessons of the day is really just the title of the original article itself with Lesson of the Day in front of it. So they're all based on an intriguing article recently published in the New York Times. And they contain the same structure. So the first thing that you'll see when you scroll down a little bit is a quick overview of the lesson that lets students know the learning goals and activities they'll be tackling, very similar to the beginning of a lesson plan you might write. You'll also notice that it's in student-friendly language. Right after that, there's a warm-up. The warm-up activity asks students to do some pre-thinking and activate prior knowledge before reading the longer article. So this is probably something you do with your students before you engage in a reading or a larger lesson. And today you're going to be doing some of these warm-ups. You scroll down a little bit more, you'll see that our lessons of the day contain questions for writing and discussion. Those questions, vary in difficulty. Some ask direct questions to check for understanding, and others ask students to think more critically about what they read, just like many of you might do with a reading in your classroom. And then finally, the lesson ends with a going further section. In most cases, these are 15 to 20-minute activities that extend the learning beyond the article. So sometimes they ask students to explore the topic they read about a bit further, maybe by watching a video or visiting another article in the Times. Other times they ask students to engage in mini projects based on what they read. We'll show you one today where it asks students to build a robot themselves. There's some really engaging, interesting activities for students to do. And then finally, I want to mention one thing about the comment section on Lessons of the Day. So as many of you know, the comment section on any of the New York Times Learning Network pieces are a pretty big area for students to converse. But you'll notice here on Lesson of the Day, comments don't tend to come in as often. And that's really not a surprise, mainly because in all of the activities that students are doing in a lesson, it wouldn't make sense for them to put it in the comment section. Usually they're filling it out for teachers, maybe on some sort of a worksheet or in Google Classroom or something like that. But what you will see if you visit the comments, and you can see it in this comment here, is sometimes teachers will post a comment talking about how the lesson went for them or how they might use it in their classroom. So it's just something to keep in mind as you're looking through these. you might be able to see something that a teacher mentions, or maybe even that a student mentioned on how the lesson went. Now that you know how to find lesson of the day and what it is, we're going to spend the next several minutes showing you how they can be used for your class. Now, over time, we found that teachers use our lessons in one of three ways: to explore content, to further practice and develop skills, and of course, to bring the world to your students. So to tell you more about these methods, I'm going to hand things off to my colleagues at the Learning Network, starting with Nicole. Welcome, Nicole.
Thanks, Ross. My name is Nicole Daniels, and I'm a staff editor here at the Learning Network. So as Ross mentioned, our Lesson of the Day feature is a great opportunity for you to dig deeper in your subject area. I'll talk a little bit more about the structure of our lessons of the day and also show you some of the variety of the lessons that we produce. We'll also talk about
how it's a way for you to explore content further and dig a little bit deeper in whatever your subject area might be. Now, like many of you, we like to start off our lessons with a warm-up, as Ross mentioned. They're normally pretty quick. We're talking like 5 minutes long. It might be scrolling through an article and looking at photographs, or watching a short video from the Times or elsewhere. It might be doing a know, want to know, learned chart, or engaging in a short discussion with peers, or a short writing exercise as well. And to get started, we're actually going to try one together. So right here, we have a screenshot of Catherine the Shark's Twitter profile. And this is from one of our lessons of the day. And we're going to just do this warm up together. I'm actually going to have you write your comments in the chat box below in just a moment. But what I want you to answer is, what do you notice as you look at her Twitter profile? What do you wonder? And what can you infer about this shark and why she's important just from the information on her Twitter account? Now, you don't have to worry about spelling or grammar in your answers, but I'm just going to ask that everyone hops into the group chat, give some thoughts. We'll take 1 minute to do this. All right. Thank you all for engaging in that chat. We saw some great answers. I saw one that said, how is she typing? A lot of you were alarmed that she's quite close to shore. Some of you were noticing that perhaps she's trying to, or inferring that she's trying to change her image, wondering why she's misunderstood. Somebody noticed that there's nobody on the beach. So this is how some of our lessons start, is by observing something, by noticing and wondering and inferring. And I'm going to let you know a little bit about this lesson just in terms of structure. So we start with a warm-up like what you all just did. Then we have questions for writing and for discussion. And here, while we are looking at comprehension, we typically try to take the questions a step further so that students are having to use critical thinking skills or applying what they read in the article to background information that they have, or perhaps even to research. And then the going further section is where we're really committed to some larger activity. We try to be conscious of, we don't want it to take up your whole class. You have other things to do as well. But the activity often asks students to do some more research, to create something. In this lesson, students were asked to learn more about tagging sharks by watching a 2-minute video. And then they actually used an online tracking hub and made their own observations about ocean life based on what they saw on that tracking hub. And it kind of continued with that conversation of what are you noticing and what do you wonder as well. So we have articles and lessons of the day that cover a wide range of topics and content areas. One I just pulled up from social studies is a lesson in which students read an article about women and free Black people who were given the right to vote in the 1700s. And as they're going further activity, they're either conducting more research or they're engaging in a debate about how we frame historical narratives. In this guest math lesson, students were given different strategies for understanding and also thinking critically about how numbers are reported around the coronavirus pandemic, particularly as it relates to death rates and the number of cases. And then in this technology lesson that I think Ross had mentioned earlier, students first are looking at robots and automation in the workplace, and then they're asked to either react to the article and share their opinion in writing or design their own robot. So a couple of takeaways in terms of content. So we try to find themes across time or give students opportunities to make those connections. This can be particularly true for social studies and history teachers who want their students to make connections between the past and the present. Also, authenticity. We know that for science and math teachers, it can be great to show here's something that we've learned in the classroom and how researchers are actually applying it on the ground and in their field. And then relevance. We start by just trying to select articles that we think students will be drawn to, will have a connection to. We also try to lay the groundwork so that as they're moving through the lesson, they can make a lot of those connections on their own and have their own understanding of why it matters. So now we're going to hear from my colleague, Rachel, again. Rachel.
Thank you, Nicole. Again, I am Rachel Manley, Professional Development Manager at the Learning Network. Another way that you can use Lesson of the Day is to practice and develop a wide range of skills. Here's a warm-up from a lesson we did on Easter eggs. And no, I'm not talking about the plastic toys that are filled with candy that you hide on Easter morning. These are actually referring to the little surprises that tech companies often bury in their products. So I'm going to show you what I mean. So I would like all of you to do this with me. I want you to open up a new tab in Google or a new browser window. Just make sure not to click out of this one. And go to Google. And I want you to search "do a barrel roll." And then once you do that, go ahead and type into the group chat, what did you find? And how did you react to that? Okay, so I hope everybody's gotten a chance to do that by now. And I see people writing observations about what they found and how they reacted. Somebody said it made them feel nauseous, it was spinning, that it rolled and it made them smile, made me dizzy. The screen did a barrel roll. I was surprised. It did a 360. Great. People even questioning how that even happened. How did that work? Blew my mind. Was my computer going nuts? Thanks, Jane. Yes, so exactly. The page does a barrel roll. And this is just one little surprise that Google has baked into their site. And you can find many more if you search Google Easter eggs. One good one to try is typing the word askew into your Google search. And that's what these are intended to do. All of your observations, that it made you laugh, it made you smile. Wow, that was crazy. Cool. How did they do that? That's the effect that these Easter eggs are intended to have. They're quirky little surprises that are meant to delight users, make them chuckle, which is something we know we could all use right now. So this warm-up is a part of the lesson of the day on the secret history of Easter eggs. Following the warm-up, then students are asked to read an article about the history of Easter eggs, starting with the first known one that was built on an Atari video game called Adventure. And now they're in Amazon, Tesla cars, and of course, Google. Then after they learn about that, they are going to answer questions about how Easter eggs are created and for what purpose. And then finally, in the going further activity, they get a chance to practice and develop their creativity and design thinking skills by inviting them to come up with an Easter egg of their own that they would hypothetically incorporate into their favorite game, app, or movie, and they design it either through writing or drawing, all while keeping in mind the audience and purpose it serves. This is a really fun task that gives them the chance to practice and develop several important skills: creativity, design thinking, and thinking intentionally about a text's audience and purpose. Our lessons help students practice and develop a wide range of content-related skills like writing, as well as numerous 21st century skills. And here are just a few additional examples. Opportunities to engage in authentic writing can be found throughout our lessons. Every lesson of the day contains questions for writing and discussion, and many of the going further activities invite students to write, whether it's argument writing, storytelling, or a synthesis of what they learned. In this lesson example here, students learn how the Library of Congress is archiving internet culture to preserve for future generations. Students are asked to make an argument for a meme to be included in this Library of Congress web archive, as well as they're invited to create their own memes. Our lessons often give students a chance to practice social emotional skills as well. In this lesson, students will learn about navigating online learning for kids living in homeless shelters or homes without internet access. Throughout this lesson, called The Digital Divide, researching the challenges of online learning for many students, students are asked to analyze multiple viewpoints and connect with the challenges faced by other kids without stable homes or the internet. Students are practicing seeing beyond their own individual experiences and are thinking about the experiences of others. Media literacy is also an important component of many of our lessons. In lessons focused on media literacy, we use the 5 key questions from the Center of Media Literacy. They are: who created this message? What creative techniques are used to attract my attention? How might different people understand this message differently than me? What values, lifestyles, and points of view are represented or omitted from this message? And why is this message being sent? So these questions are used in many of our lessons focused on media literacy. In this example lesson, Netflix is ad-free, but it isn't brand-free. Students use media literacy skills to think critically about product placement in TV shows. And as a final example, our lessons provide students with a space to think critically, whether it be about gender, race, diversity, or other social issues. In this particular lesson, called When the Monkey Chants Are For You, a soccer star's view of racist abuse, students will look at racism in European soccer and explore ways to address and remedy that problem. So these are just a few examples of ways in which students can develop and practice a wide range of skills with Lesson of the Day. So to sum it up, I just want to reiterate with a few key points and takeaways. First, these lessons incorporate opportunities for practicing all sorts of skills, particularly 21st century skills like empathy, creativity, and critical thinking. They give students the chance to practice writing across subject areas, whether it be sports, technology, to social issues and current events. And lastly, we provide students with authentic tasks, as Nicole mentioned, through which they can practice these different skills, since all of our lessons deal with real-world events and problems that are happening currently in the news. So now I'm going to hand it back to Nicole to talk about the last reason that we use Lesson of the Day.
Thank you, Rachel. So Rachel actually started to mention this, but there is a big, one of the big reasons why we create these lessons of the day is that we know that teachers want to bring current events into the classroom. And the mission of the New York Times is to seek the truth and help people understand the world. And in a way, we try to serve as the bridge between that great Times journalism and teachers and students in the classroom. We imagine it's why many of you go to the New York Times or to the Learning Network in the first place. So we're going to look at some examples of lesson of the day that we think accomplish this goal. So in this lesson of the day, it was looking at Ahlan Sim Sim, which is the Syrian Sesame Street. And we started the lesson with a warm-up, which was watching the trailer for this version of Sesame Street, which is in Arabic, but we think that there's still a lot that students can engage with, whether or not they speak Arabic. And so we're going to do that right now, actually. We're going to watch the video, and as we watch, we're going to engage with 2 questions that are from the Center for Media Literacy, which Rachel just mentioned. And those questions are, who created this message? And what values, lifestyles, and points of view are represented in this message. And as you watch, I want you to keep that in mind, and you can write in the group chat your responses and reactions. So once again, it's who created this message and what values, lifestyles, and points of view are represented in this message. Here we go. Great. So I'm seeing a lot of the themes: inclusion, togetherness, family, friendship, children, community, acceptance, being together. Somebody had said that it seems like it was perhaps created by educators. Shows that children are the same, togetherness. So these kind of media literacy skills are a way that we thought would be effective to go into this article that further discusses the Sesame Street in Syria. And the next section after students do that warm up is questions and discussion. So once again, those comprehension and not quite comprehension, going a step further, questions about the article. And then in the going further section, students were given the choice to use their media literacy skills a step further by analyzing a character from a children's TV show and to describe them, analyze what they represent, what kind of character are they. But they could also think about the connection between children's TV shows and child development. So they're given the choice in this particular lesson. And in general, we try to offer options in lessons of the day that are both hard news. So here we have perhaps talking about the election, presidential politics, or international current events, and soft news, whether that's a jigsaw puzzle, how they're made, a record-setting female astronaut, or Olympians in training. And with all of these examples, we try to offer opportunities for scaffolding, whether that's an option in the warm-up for students to do some additional research, but we try to make it as accessible as possible, regardless of what students' backgrounds are about the particular issue. We also try to offer a range so that it doesn't always have to be hard news or something that feels really intense to bring into the classroom, but there can be a range, which I think is something we're probably all looking for now, especially in the classroom. So a couple of takeaways. Through the lessons that we write, we try to encourage empathy by exposing students to experiences and multiple perspectives, perhaps experiences that are outside or different than their own, and giving them opportunities to empathize and imagine how others might experience the world. And we also try to address difficult topics, as I was just saying, in ways that feel accessible, whether partisan politics, natural disasters, natural and international tragedies. Particularly at this moment in the midst of a pandemic, we know that students are coming to parents or into the classroom with questions, whether about the coronavirus or how it's affecting their communities, and we try to tailor our content to those hard-hitting issues or things that can be really layered or complicated, and find ways for them to become teachable. And so with that, I'm going to hand things back to my colleague, Rachel.
Great. As you can see, our Lesson of the Day feature offers a wide range of uses, opportunities for students to explore subject area content, to practice and develop different skills, and to connect to the world around them. If you are a math teacher, you might have students analyze the data surrounding the coronavirus outbreak. If you teach writing, maybe you'll have students journaling with the Lost Diaries of the World lesson of the day, or arguing your favorite memes. And if you want to really focus on developing things like critical thinking, you might have students analyze the Sesame Street video, as we just did, or work to understand the challenges of online learning for homeless students. Or maybe you simply want your students to engage with current events and you ask them to choose a lesson of the day that interests them, and complete it based on their own choice. So these examples that you see on the screen now and we walked a little bit through today are really just a small sampling, the iceberg of the 1,000+ lessons that we have on our site. And so we'd like to take some time to hear from you. I'm sure throughout the last half an hour, your wheels have been spinning on how you might use Lesson of the Day with your students. You might be thinking about content connections. You might be thinking about opportunities to engage with current events during remote learning. Whatever it is, we would love to hear from you and what you're thinking. Where are you going to take this next? How are you going to use the Lesson of the Day with your students, in your classroom in the future, or right away for remote learning? Great. So Mary E. shared that she is having students find an article that they're interested in. Sorry, this chat is going so fast, it's hard for me to keep up with it. And write about it. Great. Others are saying they are going to use it to expand vocabulary.
And Rachel, if you don't mind me popping in and joining too, I saw Rebecca mentioned how she's going to use this in her debate classes, which I thought would be a really good idea. Peter said it would definitely be a great start for project-based learning. I could definitely see some of the going further activities being there. And some people here just liked some of the entries there were. Jessica K said she was going to be using the Diaries of War one. So Jessica, I hope you can, and we'd love to hear how that goes.
Great. Phyllis is mentioning using the COVID-19 resources. And so we do have a spotlight of coronavirus resources for students that will take students to a list of all of our student features that address the coronavirus.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great ideas in here, and it's really nice to see how many teachers are planning on using these to connect what they're teaching to what's happening in the world around them. I saw that Jeremy mentioned using them to answer the student's question, when will I use this stuff in the real world? I think Lessons of the Day do a very good job answering that question a lot of times. And with that, we've reached the end of Connect Your Students to the World with Lesson of the Day. Now, before we go, we'd like to remind you how to keep informed about everything that's going on at the Learning Network. So if you haven't signed up for our weekly emails, please be sure to go to our homepage, www.nytimes.com/section/learning. Scroll down and click on the link to sign up for our weekly newsletter. There, you'll receive information about our latest features, upcoming contests, webinars, and more. So again, on behalf of the Learning Network, myself, Rachel, Nicole, thank you very much for joining us. We hope you learned a lot at today's webinar, Lessons of the Day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.